all set in motion by one woman's desperate attempt to rebuild her life after losing everything in bankruptcy. A chance discovery that would eventually bring Pentagon officials to her small-town gas station, trigger emergency meetings at the highest levels of national security, and ultimately reveal classified nuclear launch codes that had been hidden for nearly 3 decades. Documents that contradicted everything intelligence agencies thought they knew about Cold War security protocols. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun cast long shadows through the dusty windows of Crossroads Gas Mart, as 38-year-old Elena Blackwood stood in the empty station, trying to convince herself she hadn't just made the biggest mistake of her life. The keys felt impossibly heavy in her trembling hand, keys to a business that had failed 4 times in the past, 6 years in a building that looked like it hadn't seen a proper renovation since the early 1980s. Just 18 months earlier, Elena had been living what many would consider the American dream. She and her husband Michael owned Blackwood Security Solutions, one of Atlanta's most prestigious private security firms, specializing in high-end corporate protection and executive security details. Their business had built such a reputation for excellence that they were booked solid 12 months in advance with waiting lists for their most sought-after consultants. Elena handled all the client relations and business development, spending her days cultivating relationships with Fortune 500 companies and designing customized security protocols that had earned her recognition from Atlanta Business Chronicle as one of the city's rising entrepreneurial stars. Her signature approach to integrated physical and digital security had become legendary among Atlanta's corporate elite, and security publications regularly featured her innovative methodologies: risk assessment matrices with behavioral analytics, vulnerability mapping with real-time monitoring, executive protection with digital footprint management. Michael managed the operational side, team coordination, and field deployments that kept their security personnel performing at the highest levels. Together, they had built something remarkable from nothing. Starting with Elena's military background and Michael's law enforcement experience, they had met in 2013 at a corporate security conference where Elena was presenting on emerging threats, and Michael was recruiting talent for his then small firm. "You should join forces with me," he had told her that night, business card in hand. "I could use someone with your strategic thinking," and they had. By 2015, they had merged their operations and established Blackwood Security Solutions in a modest office space in downtown Atlanta. By 2018, they had moved to their own facility, a beautifully renovated industrial building with state-of-the-art training rooms and enough space to house their growing team of 50 security professionals. By 2020, they owned a stunning modern home in Buckhead, were planning to start a family, and had begun discussing expansion into a second location in Charlotte. Elena's corporate security contracts were works of precision that regularly commanded $250,000 to $500,000 per year. Her signature approach involved custom threat assessments that looked like strategic masterpieces combined with security protocols that challenged traditional protection expectations. Corporate clients would book her services a year in advance, and her professional network had attracted powerful connections who eagerly awaited each new security innovation from the firm. The operational side of their business was equally successful. Major corporations, tech firms, and financial institutions relied on Blackwood Security for everything from executive protection to full facility security audits. Their largest contract was a yearly retainer with Meridian Global Banking, providing comprehensive security for international executives and quarterly shareholder meetings, a relationship worth nearly $800,000 annually. Michael had always been the investment person, the one who managed growth funds, allocated capital, and handled the increasingly complex financing of their expanding business. Elena trusted him completely with the financial aspects of their operation, focusing her energy on client relationships and maintaining the quality standards that had built their reputation. That trust, Elena would later realize, had been her greatest mistake. The first sign of trouble came in January 2023, when one of their primary equipment suppliers began demanding cash payments, instead of the net 60 terms they had enjoyed for years. Michael had explained it as a temporary cash flow issue. Several large clients had delayed contract renewals, creating a short-term shortage that would resolve itself within weeks. "It's just timing," he had assured Elena when she questioned why they suddenly couldn't afford to pay their communications equipment supplier on schedule. "The Meridian contract renewal is processing slowly, and the Davidson Industries payment won't clear until next week. Everything will normalize once we get caught up." But the cash flow problems didn't normalize. By February, they were juggling payments, delaying equipment upgrades, and Michael was spending increasing amounts of time on phone calls with creditors, explaining why payments would be just a few days late while working out extended payment schedules. Elena began noticing other warning signs that Michael dismissed as temporary complications. Their business checking account balance seemed to fluctuate wildly from day to day. Vendor checks that should have cleared were bouncing. Payroll processing that had been smooth for years was suddenly requiring manual intervention. The devastating truth emerged on March 10, 2023, a Friday that started like any other, but ended with Elena's entire world collapsing. She had arrived at their office at 7 o'clock a.m. to prepare for the Westlake Technology security implementation, a major corporate contract that represented one of their largest projects of the year. The client had ordered a comprehensive security overhaul with physical access controls, executive protection protocols, and digital security integration, a project that would require weeks of intensive preparation and deployment. At 9:15 a.m., as Elena was briefing the deployment team on the Westlake implementation timeline, two men in dark suits appeared at their office door. She assumed they were early clients or perhaps representatives from Westlake conducting a preliminary consultation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Are you Elena Blackwood?" the taller man asked, producing official-looking paperwork. "We're here with a court order regarding Blackwood Security Solutions assets." Elena stared at the documents in confusion. "There must be some mistake. Our business accounts are current. My husband handles all the financial matters and everything is up to date." "Ma'am, according to our records, Blackwood Security Solutions is 3 months behind on commercial loan payments totaling $425,000. We have authorization to begin asset inventory immediately." The next hour was a nightmare of desperate phone calls to Michael, who didn't answer his phone, while the court representatives systematically cataloged their office equipment, vehicles, and security systems. Unable to do anything but demand explanations that weren't forthcoming, Elena watched 8 years of careful business building begin to unravel before her eyes. Michael finally returned her calls at 11:30 a.m., just as the representatives were completing their initial inventory of company assets. "Elena, I can explain everything." His voice carried a strain she had never heard before. "I've been trying to fix this without worrying you. I had a system, a way to recover everything we needed. I just needed more time to make it work." "Recover? What are you talking about?" "Michael, what have you done?" The truth emerged in fragments over the following hours, each revelation more devastating than the last. Michael had been investing in cryptocurrency, initially just occasional, speculative positions that he characterized as portfolio diversification for their company's growth fund. But casual investment had evolved into an obsession that consumed increasing amounts of capital and attention. When his crypto losses began exceeding their business reserves, Michael had convinced himself that more aggressive positions would allow him to recover everything he had lost. He had secretly taken loans against their business assets, telling himself that one good market swing would restore everything he had borrowed. When commercial loans weren't sufficient, Michael had forged Elena's signature to secure additional financing, extracting $425,000 in capital that he was certain he could multiply through high-risk crypto ventures. When that money disappeared in a market crash, he had begun skipping loan payments and vendor bills, using operating funds to cover margin calls while promising himself that the next market rally would solve everything. "I was following a system," Michael explained through tears that afternoon as they sat in their empty conference room, surrounded by the remnants of their business. "I was tracking the patterns, analyzing the algorithms. I was so close to a major breakthrough, Elena. Just a few more well-timed trades, and I could have paid everything back, but there was no breaking even." Over 14 months, Michael had accumulated crypto losses totaling nearly $1.8 million, money that had come from their business accounts, growth funds, commercial loans, and deferred payments to vendors and creditors. Their business checking account showed a balance of $6,742, and their personal account contained $3,871. The Westlake Technologies contract, which should have provided $350,000 in revenue, became impossible to fulfill without equipment or personnel. Canceling the contract meant not only losing the payment, but also refunding the $175,000 deposit they had already spent on operations. Within 3 weeks, the cascade of consequences became unstoppable. Vendors who had extended credit based on Blackwood Securities' previously excellent payment history began demanding immediate settlement. Industry certifications were suspended when quality assurance inspections revealed violations they couldn't afford to correct. Corporate clients began canceling contracts when word spread through Atlanta's tight-knit security community about the financial troubles. Most devastating was losing the Meridian Global Banking contract, their largest and most stable source of revenue. The company's chief security officer called personally to explain that they couldn't risk their executive protection with a firm facing obvious financial instability. "I'm truly sorry, Elena," he said with genuine regret. "Everyone here values your security protocols, and we hate to do this. But we can't take chances with our executive safety. I hope you understand." Elena understood completely, which made it even more heartbreaking. 8 years of building relationships, maintaining quality, and exceeding expectations were destroyed by 3 weeks of revealed financial chaos that had been hidden from everyone, including her. The bankruptcy filing became inevitable when their attorney, James Donaldson, explained that their debts exceeded their assets by more than $1.2 million. Commercial loans, vendor payments, equipment leases, and facility obligations had created a financial crater that no amount of future earnings could reasonably address. "I'm sorry to be this direct," Attorney Donaldson had explained during their consultation, "but your business is insolvent and your personal assets are insufficient to cover business debts. Chapter 7 bankruptcy will eliminate most obligations, while protecting whatever exempt assets you're entitled to keep." The bankruptcy process stripped away everything they had built together. Their commercial facility was surrendered to satisfy creditor claims. Their Buckhead home was foreclosed and sold with proceeds applied to the outstanding mortgage balance. Their business equipment, including Elena's specialized security systems and Michael's custom deployment gear, was liquidated to generate cash for creditor distributions. Michael disappeared 2 days after the final bankruptcy hearing, leaving behind only a handwritten note. "Elena, I destroyed everything we worked for, and I can't face what I've done to you. You deserve a chance to rebuild without carrying the weight of my mistakes. I'm going to stay with my brother in Denver while I figure out how to get my life together. Please don't try to find me until I can figure out how to become someone worthy of your forgiveness." The note was accompanied by divorce papers he had already signed, along with a quitclaim deed transferring any remaining interest in their assets to Elena. Even in his betrayal, Michael had tried to ensure that Elena wouldn't be burdened by any future debts or obligations he might create. Elena found herself at 38 years old with nothing but her personal belongings, a 2018 Jeep Cherokee with 112,000 miles that had somehow avoided repossession, and $8,500 from the sale of her grandmother's jewelry, the only assets the bankruptcy court had classified as exempt personal property. The jewelry sale had been particularly painful. Her grandmother's diamond pendant, platinum bracelet, and emerald earrings represented the last tangible connections to the woman who had encouraged Elena to join the military, who had shared stories about building businesses during economic downturns, and whose resilience had inspired Elena throughout her life. But survival required sacrificing sentiment. The $8,500 provided enough cushion to avoid immediate homelessness while she figured out how to rebuild from nothing. For 7 months, Elena had lived with her sister Jennifer in a modest 3-bedroom house in Marietta, an arrangement that was supposed to be temporary but had stretched on as Elena struggled to find direction for her life. Jennifer, a pediatric nurse at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, had generously offered her spare room and emotional support, but the arrangement strained both sisters as weeks turned into months. Elena had taken a job at Sentinel Security Services, a retail-focused security company that provided mall security, event staff, and basic loss prevention services. The work paid $15 an hour plus minimal benefits, just enough to cover her car payments, insurance, and basic expenses while contributing to Jennifer's household. But the job was soul-crushing for someone who had spent years creating sophisticated security protocols for multinational corporations. Sentinel operated with standardized procedures using basic equipment and minimal training. Elena's workdays involved supervising mall security guards and writing simple incident reports, a mind-numbing routine that used none of her strategic skills and offered no professional satisfaction. "You're wasting your talent," Jennifer told her repeatedly. "You could get hired at any major security firm in Atlanta, Northside Protection, Elite Guard, any of the places that would appreciate what you can do." But Elena couldn't bear the thought of working for someone else in the industry where she had once been successful. Every job interview felt like admitting defeat, like accepting that she would never again have the independence and creativity that had made her love security work in the first place. The idea of working in someone else's firm, following someone else's protocols, taking orders from executives who might not appreciate her experience, it all felt like confirmation that bankruptcy had destroyed not just her business, but her identity as a security professional. Worse, working in the industry meant constant reminders of what she had lost. Former clients would recognize her, offering sympathetic smiles and awkward conversations about what happened to Blackwood Security. Vendors who had once courted her business would greet her with the careful politeness reserved for people whose circumstances had dramatically changed. The emotional weight of these encounters was almost unbearable. Elena had worked so hard to build respect and recognition in Atlanta's competitive security industry. Seeing that respect replaced by pity felt worse than anonymous failure. The idea of buying the failed Crossroads Gas Mart had come from a Facebook marketplace listing that Jennifer had forwarded as a light-hearted distraction during one of their Friday evening conversations about Elena's future. "Look at this," Jennifer had laughed, showing Elena the ad on her phone. $550 for an entire gas station. "There's gotta be something seriously wrong with it. Maybe it's built on toxic waste or has ghosts." The ad was brief and blunt. Former gas station for sale. Millerville, Gia. $550 cash only as is condition. Perfect for someone with more courage than sense. Serious inquiries only. Elena had initially dismissed the idea as ridiculous. Commercial properties didn't sell for less than the cost of a mid-range smartphone. But something about the ad nagged at her throughout the evening. Perhaps the seller's brutal honesty about the property being suitable for someone with more courage than sense. That phrase resonated with Elena in a way she hadn't expected. She was someone with more courage than sense, someone who's practical. Judgment had been compromised by the desire to believe that things could be different. The bankruptcy had stripped away her illusions about financial security and business success. But it hadn't eliminated her fundamental belief that with enough determination and hard work, it might be possible to rebuild something meaningful. The drive to Millerville took 90 minutes through Georgia countryside that was showing the first hints of fall color. Elena had called in sick to Sentinel, the first time she had missed work in 7 months, and made the trip on a Wednesday morning, when traffic was light and her anxiety was manageable. The address led her to a weathered single-story building squeezed between Millerville Pawn and Lone and a vacant lot that appeared to have once housed a small restaurant. The gas station was located on Main Street, just 4 blocks from the Millerville Town Hall, in what appeared to be the slowly declining center of a rural community that had seen better days. The building was clearly old, probably dating to the late 1960s based on the architectural style, but it had good bones. The storefront windows were intact though dirty. The cinder block structure showed no obvious cracks, and the location offered visibility from both directions on Main Street, the primary route through Millerville. Frank Donovan, the 68-year-old owner, met Elena at the front door with a ring of ancient keys and a weary expression that suggested he had shown the property to too many dreamers who couldn't follow through on their ambitious plans. "I'll be straight with you right from the start," Mr. Donovan said as he unlocked the front door. "4 different people have tried to make a go of this place in the past 6 years. All of them had more business experience than you probably do, based on your phone call. And all of them gave up within 24 months. The candor was refreshing. After months of carefully diplomatic conversations about Elena's transition period and new opportunities, Mr. Donovan was offering truth without pity, practical information without false encouragement. The interior was a mixture of obvious potential and significant problems. The main retail space featured solid concrete floors and a functional layout that could accommodate various business concepts. Large windows provided excellent natural light, and the space offered good flow between retail areas and storage rooms. The property included some usable equipment, an old cash register that appeared to be from the early 2000s, metal shelving units that showed wear but remained sturdy, commercial refrigeration units that would need servicing but seemed mechanically sound, and a basic security system that was outdated but functional. But there were also obvious issues that would require attention and investment. The electrical system needed updating to handle modern equipment loads. The plumbing showed signs of leaks and aged fixtures. The roof had visible stains suggesting water intrusion. The entire building had the musty smell of a space that had been closed up for too long, suggesting possible moisture problems or inadequate ventilation. Most concerning was the exterior concrete pad where gas pumps had once stood, now covered with temporary metal plates and surrounded by caution tape. The underground tanks were decommissioned back in 2008, Mr. Donovan explained, pointing to the covered areas with obvious frustration. Environmental inspectors said they were properly emptied and filled with sand according to regulations. But the last tenant claimed there were still issues, odors or something. My maintenance guy checked twice but couldn't find anything obvious. As they toured the small efficiency apartment attached to the rear of the building, a basic living space with minimal kitchen facilities, a tiny bathroom, and a view of Millerville's water tower, Mr. Donovan shared the property's recent history with the detached honesty of someone who had been through too many failed business ventures. "My father bought this building in 1972 as part of his retirement plan," he explained, gesturing toward faded photographs of a smiling man standing proudly in front of gas pumps that were now long gone. For 30 years, it operated as Donovan's service station. When Dad retired in 2002, we thought it would be easy to find another operator. But the gas station business has gotten so much harder, and this location has challenges we didn't anticipate. The first replacement tenant had been Jason Miller, an experienced convenience store manager from Savannah, who had grand plans for a specialty convenience store featuring local products and gourmet coffee. He had invested nearly $30,000 in new equipment and renovation, creating an attractive space that initially drew curious locals and passing travelers on their way to larger towns. But Jason had underestimated Millerville's market for $4 coffees and $6 artisanal snacks. His products were good, but the local customer base couldn't support the prices necessary to cover his costs and generate reasonable profit. He lasted 18 months before admitting that his concept was too ambitious for the rural market. The second attempt came from the Williams family, Robert and Lisa, who wanted to create a basic gas station and convenience store with more reasonable pricing and a better understanding of local needs. They had fewer resources than Jason, but more realistic expectations about what Millerville customers would actually purchase. The Williams family had built a loyal following among local residents who appreciated their friendly service and fair prices, plus weekend hunters and fishermen who stopped for supplies on their way to nearby recreation areas. But operating costs were higher than projected. Competition from larger chain stores in neighboring towns was fierce, and the couple struggled to generate sufficient revenue to cover rent, utilities, and loan payments on their equipment. They made it 22 months before concluding that the location couldn't sustain both retail and fuel operations in a market increasingly dominated by large corporate chains. The final month had been particularly difficult, with the couple working 16-hour days while watching their savings disappear and their relationship deteriorate under financial pressure. The most recent failure had been particularly heartbreaking. Daniel Peterson, a 52-year-old military veteran, had used his retirement savings to open Peterson's Market in Delhi, serving both convenience items and fresh sandwiches. His hot breakfasts and lunch specials had attracted customers from throughout Millerville, and his military precision had kept operations running efficiently. Daniel had been incredibly dedicated, working 7 days a week, arriving at 5 a.m. to prepare fresh food and staying until 9 p.m. to serve evening customers. His products were excellent, his prices were fair, and his customer service was legendary among people who had discovered his small market. But rising food costs, increased competition from dollar stores, and the economic pressure of trying to operate in a town with declining population had slowly eroded his profit margins until he was working 16-hour days just to break even. Final blow came when his refrigeration equipment failed, eliminating his ability to store perishable items and destroying $3,000 in inventory overnight. Daniel was the one who really broke my heart, Mr. Donovan admitted as they stood in the empty retail space where someone had left a hand-drawn American flag taped to the wall. He worked harder than anyone I've ever seen, and his food was incredible. When he finally had to give up, he sat in this store for 2 hours, apologizing for letting me down. A man who served 4 combat tours apologizing to me because his refrigerator broke. That's when I decided to just sell the place for whatever I could get. The asking price of $550 represented Mr. Donovan's desire to find someone who would actually use this space rather than maximizing his financial return. At 68 years old, with his health declining and his children living in other states, he was more interested in seeing the building occupied than in generating significant income from its sale. "At my age, I don't need the money," he explained, with the practical resignation of someone who had learned to prioritize simplicity over profit. "I need to know that this building will be useful to someone instead of just sitting empty. My father always said that buildings were meant to have life in them, not just collect dust. The terms were remarkably simple. $550 cash for the building and all remaining equipment, with the buyer responsible for all taxes, utilities, and any necessary repairs. Mr. Donovan would transfer the deed immediately with no financing contingencies. Inspection periods or other complications that might give either party second thoughts about the transaction. As Elena stood alone in the empty store after Mr. Donovan left to give her time to consider the decision, she felt the weight of a choice that could define the rest of her life. The logical part of her brain cataloged all the reasons this was a terrible idea. She had extremely limited capital, no business plan for a convenience store, no established customer base in Millerville, and no guarantee that she could succeed where 4 previous experienced operators had failed spectacularly. The covered gas tank areas seemed to mock her optimism, reminding her that even buildings with good foundations could hide expensive problems that destroyed the dreams of people who couldn't afford to fix them. The musty smell suggested moisture, issues that could require thousands in remediation. The outdated electrical system might need complete replacement to handle modern equipment safely. But something about the space called to her in a way that transcended practical calculation. The simple layout felt right in a way that the corporate security offices never had. She could imagine herself working at the counter, the smell of fresh coffee filling the space, customers gathering to share conversation about their daily lives. More importantly, Elena realized that buying the gas station represented something more than a business investment. It was a chance to reclaim the independence and resilience that bankruptcy had stripped away. At $550, even complete failure wouldn't be financially catastrophic, but success could provide the foundation for rebuilding everything she had lost, while creating something entirely her own. The apartment in the back, while small and basic, would eliminate rent payments that had been consuming nearly half her monthly income. Living at her business would also allow her to work the long hours that a new venture required without worrying about commuting or maintaining a separate residence. That evening, Elena called Jennifer from her hotel room in Millerville. Her sister's contact information highlighted on her phone screen as she struggled with the decision that would determine her immediate future. "I know this sounds completely insane," she began without preamble, "but I think I'm going to buy it." "Elena, I need you to be brutally honest with me," Jennifer replied with the careful tone of someone who had watched her sister make one life-changing decision already that year. That would have to wait until the business was generating income, but Elena made a note to research state regulations regarding abandoned underground storage tanks. Elena spent her first week obtaining the necessary business licenses, establishing accounts with wholesale suppliers, and deep cleaning every surface in preparation for health department inspection. The process was tedious, but straightforward given her experience with corporate compliance requirements, and she felt genuine satisfaction in preparing her own business according to her own standards. The health department inspection went smoothly, with the inspector commenting favorably on the cleanliness and Elena's obvious familiarity with commercial food handling requirements. Her business license application was approved without complications, and her basic liability insurance policy went into effect immediately. By the end of her second week, Elena was ready to begin actual operations. She started conservatively, focusing on basic items that would allow her to test her systems, refine her inventory, and begin building relationships with potential customers. Essential groceries, household items, coffee, and simple prepared foods like pre-made sandwiches, products that served immediate community needs, without requiring extensive preparation or specialized equipment. Her first customers were local, residents who stopped by out of curiosity, attracted by the under-new management and grand opening signs she had placed in the windows. The response was cautiously positive, with many expressing relief that the building was occupied again. After sitting empty for nearly 6 months, "We've been having to drive all the way to Lawrenceville for basic supplies," One elderly customer told her during her first week of operation. "Having you open right here on Main Street is going to make a real difference for folks who don't drive much anymore." Elena listened carefully to these early customers, taking detailed notes about products they requested and adjusting her inventory accordingly. She quickly realized that Millerville had significant unmet needs, not for fancy specialty items, but for reasonably priced basics and reliable service that eliminated the need to drive 20 minutes to larger towns for everyday necessities. By her fourth week, Crossroads Market was serving 30 to 40 customers daily. Local residents, municipal workers, and people passing through town began establishing her store as part of their regular routines. Word spread through Millerville's small community, and by the sixth week, Elena was seeing steady growth in both customer count and average purchase size. She introduced hot coffee and fresh breakfast items in her second month, using a small commercial coffee maker and simple warming equipment that required minimal investment. The addition of fresh coffee and breakfast sandwiches attracted morning commuters, who previously had no local options for their daily caffeine fix. This small expansion increased both revenue and foot traffic, while requiring only modest additional inventory. But it was during her third month of operation, while addressing the covered areas, where gas pumps had once stood, that Elena Blackwood would make the discovery that would transform her simple market venture into something she could never have. Imagine, the metal plates had become increasingly problematic as winter weather caused water to pool around their edges, creating both safety hazards and potential environmental concerns. She had finally saved enough money to hire Dave Wilson, a local contractor, to properly assess the decommissioned tank areas and develop a permanent solution that would comply with environmental regulations, while improving the property's appearance and functionality. What they found beneath those metal plates would change not only Elena's life, but potentially national security protocols that had been established decades earlier. Elena stood watching as Dave used specialized equipment to carefully remove the first metal plate, revealing the concrete pad beneath that had once supported gas pumps. "We need to check the tank access points before determining how to proceed," Dave explained, examining the concrete for the circular metal covers that would provide access to the underground storage tanks. The first access point was located exactly where the station's original plans indicated, and Dave used specialized tools to open the heavy metal cover. According to the documentation, these tanks should have been properly emptied, cleaned, and filled with sand back in 2008, he said, shining a powerful flashlight into the opening. "We just need to verify the condition before sealing everything permanently." Dave's expression changed immediately as his flashlight illuminated the tank interior. "That's strange," he muttered, adjusting his position to get a better view. "This doesn't look like sand. There's something else down there." Elena knelt beside him, peering into the opening. The flashlight beam revealed what appeared to be a large metal container inside the tank, something that obviously didn't belong in a properly decommissioned fuel storage system. "What is that?" she asked, immediately concerned about potential environmental violations. "I'm not sure," Dave replied, carefully lowering a measuring device into the opening. "But it's definitely not sand, and it doesn't look like any contamination I've ever seen. This is something solid that was deliberately placed inside the tank." Over the next hour, Dave used specialized equipment to carefully examine the mysterious object without disturbing it. The tank contained what appeared to be a military-grade storage container approximately 6 feet long and 3 feet wide, positioned in a way that suggested intentional placement rather than accidental introduction. "Elena, this is way beyond my expertise," Dave said finally, securing the access point while they determined next steps. "This looks like some kind of specialized container that someone deliberately placed inside this tank. Given the condition and placement, this wasn't an accident or oversight during decommissioning. Someone went to considerable effort to hide this here." The discovery created immediate practical concerns. Any departure from standard decommissioning procedures could potentially create environmental liabilities for Elena as the current property owner. But there were also security considerations. Unauthorized objects in underground storage tanks raised questions about potential hazards that required professional assessment. We need to contact the proper authorities, Elena decided, her security background immediately informing her approach to the situation. This could be anything from abandoned equipment to something more serious. Either way, we need experts to handle the removal and assessment. Dave agreed to secure the site while Elena contacted the Georgia Environmental Protection Division to report the unexpected discovery during inspection of decommissioned tanks. Her call was initially processed as a routine environmental compliance issue, but the description of a military-style container hidden in a fuel tank quickly elevated the response. Within hours, what began as a simple environmental compliance matter had attracted attention from multiple agencies. The initial environmental inspector arrived by mid-afternoon, accompanied by representatives from the County Sheriff's Department and State Emergency Management Office, a response team. That suggested Elena's discovery was being treated with unusual seriousness. The lead inspector, Robert Caldwell, interviewed Elena about the property's history and her recent purchase while his team conducted preliminary assessment of the tank access point. Ms. Blackwood, based on your description and our initial findings, we're going to need specialized equipment to safely extract whatever is inside that tank, he explained. For safety reasons, we'll need to temporarily close your business and establish a secure perimeter. Elena watched as additional vehicles, ARRIV-ED unmarked SUVs with government plates and equipment trucks carrying specialized extraction gear. By evening, Crossroads Market was surrounded by official vehicles and security tape, with technicians in protective gear preparing for what appeared to be a major operation. Sarah Matthews, a Department of Energy representative who appeared to be coordinating the response, approached Elena with professional courtesy that barely concealed obvious tension. Ms. Blackwood, we appreciate your prompt reporting of this discovery. I need to ask you to temporarily relocate while we complete our assessment and extraction procedures. We'll provide accommodations and compensation for business interruption. The response seemed disproportionate for what might be simple abandoned equipment, raising Elena's suspicions about what might actually be inside the tank. Her security background had trained her to recognize when officials were responding to potential high-risk scenarios while attempting to maintain public calm. Miss Matthews, I understand operational security, Elena said carefully. I ran a security firm for 8 years before purchasing this property. If there's something dangerous in that tank, I deserve to know what risks I'm facing as the property owner. The candor appeared to surprise Ms. Matthews, who reassessed Elena with newfound professional respect. You're right, and your background makes this easier to explain. We're treating this as a potential CBRN discovery: chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear materials. The container matches military transport specifications used for sensitive materials. Until we can safely extract and identify the contents, we're implementing standard hazardous materials protocols. The explanation confirmed Elena's suspicions, while raising profound questions about how such materials could have ended up in an abandoned gas station in rural Georgia. Do you have any idea how something like this would have been placed here, or when it might have happened? That's part of what we're investigating, Ms. Matthews replied with careful professionalism. Based on the tank decommissioning documentation, the most likely time frame would be during or shortly before 2008, when the tanks were officially taken out of service. But we'll know more once we can safely extract and examine the container. Elena was relocated to a hotel in a neighboring town while the extraction operation continued throughout the night. From her hotel room, she could see the glow of powerful lights illuminating Crossroads Market as teams of specialists worked to safely remove whatever had been hidden beneath her property. The surreal nature of the situation wasn't lost on Elena. Less than 3 months after purchasing a failed gas station for $550 in a desperate attempt to rebuild her life, she was watching from a government-provided hotel room as hazmat teams extracted mysterious military containers from beneath her property. The building that had represented her last chance at independence was now the center of what appeared to be a significant security operation. At 7:30 the following morning, Ms. Matthews arrived at Elena's hotel room with news that would forever change her understanding of what she had purchased. "Ms. Blackwood, we've successfully extracted the container and conducted preliminary assessment of its contents. I'm authorized to share certain information with you as the property owner, but this will require your agreement to confidentiality protocols." After signing multiple non-disclosure agreements, Elena finally learned what had been hidden beneath her gas station. "The container we extracted is a military-grade secure storage unit designed for sensitive documents," Ms. Matthews explained, her voice maintaining professional calm despite the extraordinary nature of what she was revealing. "It contains what appear to be classified materials related to nuclear weapons launch protocols dating from the late 1990s. The revelation was stunning. Nuclear launch protocols? In an abandoned gas tank in Millerville, Georgia? How is that even possible?" "That's what we're still trying to determine," Ms. Matthews acknowledged. "Based on preliminary assessment, these appear to be authentic materials that were improperly removed from secure facilities. The documentation includes what appear to be partial nuclear launch codes, facility access protocols, and command authentication procedures that would have been classified at the highest levels." The implications were staggering. Classified nuclear materials hidden in an abandoned gas station represented not just a security breach but potentially one of the most significant vulnerabilities in America's nuclear command and control systems. If authentic, these materials could have provided unauthorized access to systems designed to prevent accidental or unauthorized launch of nuclear weapons. "We've initiated emergency notification procedures that extend to the highest levels of national security oversight," Ms. Matthews continued. "Teams from the Pentagon, Department of Energy, and National Security Council are en route to assess these materials directly. Your property is currently under federal protection while we complete our investigation." Elena struggled to process the magnitude of what she was hearing. "Do you have any idea who might have hidden these materials or why they would choose an abandoned gas station in rural Georgia?" "We have several working theories," Ms. Matthews replied carefully. "The location makes strategic sense from a certain perspective: rural, unremarkable, unlikely to attract attention. The tanks provided protection from environmental damage and detection methods. Someone with knowledge of the decommissioning process could have anticipated that the tanks would be filled with sand and effectively sealed for decades. Over the next 3 days, Elena watched from mandated distance as her small market became the focus of increasingly high-level security operations. Military vehicles, unmarked government aircraft landing at the small regional airport, and a steady stream of officials with security credentials suggested that her accidental discovery had triggered response protocols at the highest levels of government. On the 4th day, Elena was transported to a secure facility for a meeting that would provide partial answers while raising even more profound questions about what she had unwittingly purchased. The facility appeared to be a repurposed industrial building with extraordinary security measures, multiple checkpoints, biometric verification, and signal-blocking technology that rendered electronic devices inoperable. Inside a windowless conference room, Elena met with representatives from military intelligence, the Department of Energy, and what appeared to be national security officials who identified themselves only by first names. The senior official, who introduced himself as Director Wilson, explained the preliminary findings of their investigation. "Ms. Blackwood, your discovery has exposed what appears to be one of the most significant security breaches in our nuclear command and control history. He began, his tone reflecting the gravity of the situation. The materials you discovered contain authentic launch authentication codes, facility access protocols, and command procedures that were current during the period between 1996 and 1998. He explained that these materials should have been stored exclusively in the most secure government facilities, with access limited to a small number of specially cleared personnel. Their presence in an abandoned gas station represented a catastrophic failure of security protocols designed to protect America's most sensitive defense systems. Our preliminary investigation suggests these materials were deliberately hidden during the period when the previous owner was preparing to decommission the underground tanks. Director Wilson continued. We've identified a person of interest who worked as a contractor on the decommissioning project, who previously held security clearances at a military installation where these materials were stored. The emerging picture was both fascinating and disturbing. Someone with access to classified nuclear materials had apparently stolen documents, transported them across multiple security boundaries, and hidden them in a rural gas station scheduled for decommissioning, creating what amounted to a dead drop that might have remained undiscovered for decades. What we don't yet understand is the motive, Director Wilson acknowledged. This doesn't match the profile of typical espionage or material being prepared for transfer to foreign entities. There were no apparent attempts to sell or transfer these materials. Instead, it appears someone was creating a secure, long-term storage location for materials they wanted preserved but not necessarily used. For Elena, the revelation created profound questions about her property and its future. What happens to my business now? Can I eventually reopen, or has this permanently changed the status of the property? That's partly why we wanted to meet directly, Director Wilson replied. Your cooperation and prompt reporting have been invaluable in containing what could have been an extraordinary security vulnerability. We're implementing a comprehensive remediation plan for your property that will include complete replacement of the tank areas, security enhancements, and appropriate compensation for business interruption. He explained that the federal government would cover all costs associated with remediation while providing financial support to ensure Elena's business remained viable during the investigation period. Additionally, there would be a substantial reward available through existing security programs designed to incentivize reporting of classified materials found outside secure channels. In simple terms, Ms. Blackwood, your $550 investment may have prevented incalculable security risks while qualifying you for significant compensation under national security reward protocols. Director Wilson concluded. Once remediation is complete, you'll be able to resume normal business operations with a significantly improved property and the knowledge that you've performed an extraordinary service to national security. The conversation continued with detailed discussion of timelines, compensation structures, and security protocols that would apply during the investigation period. Throughout the meeting, Elena was struck by the profound irony of her situation. The bankruptcy that had seemed like the end of her professional life had led directly to purchasing a property that contained materials significant enough to attract attention from the highest levels of national security. The failing gas station that represented her last desperate attempt at independence had become the site of a discovery that might not only resolve her financial challenges, but potentially impact national defense protocols that had been established decades earlier. The metal plates that had seemed like a liability requiring expensive remediation had been protecting materials whose discovery would now fund complete renovation of her property. When you said you were buying that old gas station, I worried about environmental problems or structural issues, not government interventions. It's nothing illegal on my part, Elena assured her. Actually, my discovery has helped identify a potential security issue. The government wants to monitor the situation and is willing to invest significantly in my property and business to facilitate that monitoring. "This sounds like the plot of a spy movie, not a small business renovation," Jennifer observed. "Are you sure you understand what you're getting involved with? Government agencies don't invest in failing gas stations without expecting substantial returns on that investment." It was a fair observation that Elena had been considering throughout the briefings. The financial benefits were extraordinary, but they came with obligations and potential complications that extended far beyond normal business operations. She would be operating within parameters established by intelligence agencies, making decisions informed by security considerations rather than purely business objectives. "I understand the complications," Elena acknowledged, "but I also see the opportunity. My security background makes me uniquely qualified for this situation, and the financial support would transform what might have been years of struggling into immediate viability. Sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the best destinations." After considering all angles of the proposal, Elena met with the government representatives and agreed to their terms with certain conditions that protected her autonomy as a business owner. The property would be renovated according to her specifications. Security enhancements would be designed to complement rather than compromise business operations, and she would retain final authority over customer-facing decisions. The transformation of Crossroads Market began immediately, with a carefully crafted cover story about environmental remediation expanding into general property improvements. Construction teams, many with security clearances disguised as ordinary contractors, worked efficiently to implement both the visible renovations and the discrete monitoring systems that would serve counterintelligence objectives. The underground tanks were properly remediated and permanently sealed, with ground-penetrating radar confirming no additional hidden containers remained on the property. The gas pump areas were converted into an attractive patio space with seating for customers, effectively hiding the previous tank access points beneath decorative concrete and landscaping features. Inside, the market underwent comprehensive modernization. New flooring, energy-efficient lighting, updated electrical systems, and modern refrigeration units transformed the dated space into an attractive retail environment. The checkout counter was rebuilt with improved ergonomics and integrated technology that served both business and security functions without obvious surveillance features. The apartment received equally dramatic improvements: updated kitchen and bathroom facilities, improved insulation, new appliances, and subtle security enhancements disguised as modern convenience features. By the time renovations were complete, Elena's $550 investment had received improvements valued at over $380,000, all carefully documented as environmental remediation and small business development grants to maintain the operations cover. Throughout the renovation process, Elena worked closely with both construction teams and security specialists, learning how her business would function as both a legitimate market and a surveillance platform. Her background in corporate security proved invaluable, allowing her to suggest modifications that would improve both operational aspects while maintaining the discrete nature of the monitoring systems. "You have a natural talent for this work," observed Agent Foster during one of their implementation reviews. "The way you've integrated security requirements with business functionality shows the kind of thinking we try to develop in our field." Operatives. "I spent years designing security systems that protected people without disrupting their activities," Elena replied. "The principles aren't that different, even if the stakes in technology are more advanced. Effective security should be invisible until it's needed." By early March, just 5 months after Elena had purchased the failing gas station for $550, Crossroads Market reopened with a community celebration that attracted most of Millerville's residents. The transformation was dramatic, from abandoned building to attractive community market with expanded offerings including fresh food, local products, and the patio space that immediately became a gathering spot for local residents. What customers couldn't see were the sophisticated monitoring systems integrated throughout the property, cameras with facial recognition capabilities, signal intelligence equipment that could detect and analyze electronic communications, and sensors that recorded pattern-of-life data for everyone who entered the premises. The systems fed encrypted data to analysts who were searching for any connections to Thomas Reed or his potential network. Elena's role required balancing normal business operations with security awareness, maintaining the image of a dedicated small business owner, while remaining alert for unusual patterns or individuals who might connect to the investigation. Her daily routine included regular security briefings, disguised as supplier calls and data transfers hidden within normal business communications. The business thrived under the unusual arrangement, with capital constraints eliminated by government funding. Elena could stock higher quality inventory, implement attractive pricing, and develop community-focused programs that quickly established Crossroads Market as an essential part of Millerville's daily life. The transformation was so complete that few remembered the building's history of failed businesses and abandonment. Most rewarding was the realization that her security expertise, skills that had seemed wasted during her months of mall security work, now served a purpose far more significant than corporate protection. The bankruptcy that had destroyed her previous business had ultimately led to a position where her professional capabilities contributed directly to national security operations. 3 months after reopening, Elena received an encrypted message requesting an urgent meeting at a secure facility. The summons came through established channels but outside regular briefing schedules, suggesting developments significant enough to warrant immediate attention. Agent Foster met her at the facility entrance, her expression conveying both excitement and tension. "We've had a breakthrough directly connected to your property," she explained as they proceeded through security checkpoints. The monitoring systems captured something that has accelerated the entire investigation. In the secured briefing room, General Harmon and several analysts were reviewing data displayed across multiple screens. "Ms. Blackwood, your markets systems identified a person of interest last week, someone whose behavior pattern triggered our analytics," the general explained. Facial recognition initially categorized him as a routine customer, but deep background analysis revealed connections we weren't expecting. The individual, identified as James Mercer, had visited Crossroads Market 3 times in the past month. Behavior that seemed ordinary for a local resident. What distinguished his visits were subtle behaviors captured by the monitoring systems, particular interest in the areas where tanks had been located, unusual movement patterns through the store, and digital signatures suggesting sophisticated counter-surveillance awareness. We ran comprehensive background on Mercer and discovered he worked with Thomas Reed at 2 different facilities between 2001 and 2006, Agent Foster explained. His current credentials show employment with a private engineering firm, but our analysis indicates he's been maintaining irregular contact with individuals connected to foreign intelligence services. The discovery had shifted the investigation from historical security breach to active counterintelligence operation. Mercer's interest in the former gas station suggested he might have knowledge of Reed's dead drop system and was potentially checking whether the materials remain secure. "We believe Mercer is part of a dormant network that Reed established before his disappearance," General Harmon continued. "His appearance at your market immediately after renovation suggests they had contingency protocols for checking their hidden materials if the locations changed ownership or underwent significant modifications." For Elena, the revelation created both professional satisfaction and personal concern. Her business had successfully served its intelligence function, providing exactly the kind of information the operation was designed to capture, but the presence of an active security threat connected to her property raised obvious questions about potential risks. "What does this mean for me and my business going forward?" she asked, maintaining the professional calm that had characterized her participation. throughout the operation. Are there security implications I should be concerned about? That's precisely why we wanted to brief you immediately, Agent Foster replied. We're enhancing the security presence around your property, discreetly, of course, and implementing additional protective measures. Your personal safety is our highest priority, alongside the counterintelligence objectives. The operational plan was being adjusted to capitalize on Mercer's appearance. Rather than simply monitoring his activities, the intelligence team would use Elena's market as a platform for a controlled approach, creating opportunities to identify additional network members while gathering evidence of their activities and intentions. We believe your property may be just one node in a distributed system, General Harmon explained. Reed likely established multiple dead drops, each containing partial information that would be valuable only when combined with materials from other locations. Mercer's appearance suggests they're trying to reconstitute that system, potentially for transfer to unauthorized parties. The implications extended far beyond Elena's small market in rural Georgia. If Reed had indeed created a distributed network of hidden materials, the combined information could potentially compromise critical security systems, protecting America's most sensitive defense capabilities. What had begun as an accidental discovery during routine renovation was expanding into a counterintelligence operation with national security implications. We're not asking you to do anything differently, Agent Foster assured her. Continue operating your business normally while remaining observant. The systems will capture what we need, and our field teams will handle operational security. Your consistency is actually our best asset. Any change in your routine might alert Mercer that we're aware of his significance. As Elena drove back to Millerville that evening, she reflected on the extraordinary path that had led from bankruptcy to becoming a critical component in a national security operation. The financial disaster that had seemed like the end of her professional career had ultimately positioned her perfectly for this unexpected role, providing both the motivation to purchase the failing gas station and the security expertise to participate effectively in the unfolding investigation. The building she had bought for $550 out of financial desperation had become not just a successful business, but a crucial intelligence platform in an operation involving the highest levels of government. The covered tank areas that had initially seemed like a liability requiring expensive remediation had revealed secrets that transformed both her personal circumstances and potentially the security protocols protecting America's most sensitive defense systems. Approaching Millerville, Elena could see Crossroads Market illuminated against the evening sky, the exterior lighting highlighting the renovated facade and landscaped patio area that had replaced the former gas pump islands. To casual observers, it was simply an attractive small-town market that had undergone impressive renovation. Only Elena and a select group of intelligence professionals understood its true significance as the first confirmed discovery in what might be an extensive network of hidden materials threatening national security. As she parked behind the building and entered through the private entrance to her apartment, Elena Blackwood felt a profound sense of purpose that had been missing during the darkest days following her bankruptcy. The financial disaster that had destroyed her security business had led directly to discovering actual security vulnerabilities of extraordinary significance. The professional skills that had seemed wasted during months of mall security work were now serving objectives far more important than corporate protection. Most significantly, the courage required to invest her last resources in a failing rural gas station had revealed itself as the critical decision that positioned her to make a discovery with implications extending to the highest levels of national security. Sometimes the most desperate choices reveal opportunities beyond imagination, transforming apparent disasters into unexpected paths to meaningful contribution and personal redemption. Tomorrow would bring new challenges in balancing business operations with security awareness. continuing to build community relationships while remaining alert for additional signals related to the investigation. But tonight, Elena fell asleep with the satisfaction of knowing that her apparent financial failure had ultimately led to success more significant than any corporate achievement she had previously imagined. The bankruptcy that had seemed to define her was now merely one chapter in a story that included making one of the most significant counterintelligence discoveries in recent history. The $550 investment that had seemed like a desperate gamble had uncovered materials whose security implications were literally priceless, transforming a failing gas station into a pivotal location in an unfolding operation that might ultimately protect America's most sensitive defense systems. Sometimes the greatest opportunities emerge from situations that initially appear to be absolute failures, requiring only the courage to continue moving forward when retreat seems like the only rational option. 6 months after the discovery of classified materials beneath her gas station, Elena Blackwood stood behind the counter of Crossroads Market, serving customers with a smile that revealed nothing about the sophisticated intelligence operation unfolding around them. The market had become the heart of Millerville's daily life, a gathering place where residents shared coffee and conversation, while intelligence systems quietly gathered data on everyone who entered. The transformation had exceeded even Elena's most optimistic projections. What began as a desperate $550 investment had evolved into a thriving business with expanded offerings, community programs, and a loyal customer base that drove steadily increasing revenue. The financial struggles that characterized her first months of ownership had been replaced by stability and growth that allowed her to implement new ideas without constant concern about basic survival. More remarkable was the dual purpose that now defined her daily operations. Beneath the surface of normal business activities, Crossroads Market functioned as a sophisticated surveillance platform in an expanding counterintelligence investigation. The discovery of James Mercer's connection to Thomas Reed had opened new avenues of inquiry, revealing patterns and relationships that extended far beyond rural Georgia. "Morning, Elena," called Martha Jenkins, a retired schoolteacher who had become a regular morning customer. "The usual coffee and blueberry muffin today." Martha was one of dozens of locals who had established daily routines at Crossroads, providing consistent baseline activity against which unusual patterns could be identified. "Coming right up," Elena replied, preparing the order while maintaining awareness of other customers moving through the store. After months of operation, she had developed an instinctive ability to distinguish routine behaviors from potential signals, the subtle differences between someone genuinely shopping and someone assessing the space for other purposes. The bell above the door chimed as a middle-aged man in business casual attire entered, someone Elena recognized immediately, though she maintained a neutral expression. James Mercer had established a weekly pattern of visits, typically arriving Thursday mornings and purchasing the same items while casually observing the former tank areas now converted to outdoor seating. "Good morning," Elena greeted him with the same professional courtesy she showed all customers. "Beautiful day out there." "It certainly is," Mercer replied with practiced casualness. "Just need to grab a few things before heading back to Atlanta." Elena watched through discreet surveillance as Mercer followed his established pattern, selecting a bottled water, protein bar, and local newspaper before approaching the counter. His behavior appeared completely normal to casual observation, but the hidden systems were capturing microscopic details, his eye movement patterns, subtle physical responses to security cameras, and digital signature from the encrypted phone in his pocket. "Will that be all today?" Elena asked, maintaining the performance that both understood was necessary. "Actually, I was wondering if you ever considered restoring the gas pumps," Mercer said, introducing a new element to their usual interaction. "This location seems perfect for fuel service again. I work with an engineering firm that specializes in tank installations. Could be a good business expansion." The question wasn't random. It represented a carefully crafted approach designed to open conversation about the underground tanks where classified materials had been hidden. Elena had been briefed on various scenarios where Mercer might attempt to gather information about the former storage areas. "I've thought about it," she replied with practiced ease, "but the environmental remediation was so extensive that going back to fuel service doesn't make financial sense." The tanks were completely decommissioned, filled with sand and sealed permanently, according to the inspection reports. She watched Mercer's micro-expressions as she mentioned the tanks being filled with sand, the slight tightening around his eyes and momentary pause in his breathing that confirmed the significance of that specific detail. These were precisely the reactions the intelligence team had anticipated when developing her response protocols. "That's probably wise," he recovered smoothly. "Fuel service adds complications most small businesses don't need. Your market seems to be doing well without it." "It's been a good investment," Elena confirmed, completing the transaction while the hidden systems continued gathering data on every aspect of the interaction. "The community has been incredibly supportive." After Mercer departed, Elena sent a prearranged text message that appeared to be ordering supplies, but actually alerted the surveillance team about the new approach. Within minutes, her phone rang with what seemed to be a routine business call, but was actually a secure connection to Agent Foster. "That's significant escalation," Foster noted after Elena described the interaction. Previous visits were passive observation, but today he directly probed about the tanks. Something has changed in their operational timeline. The intelligence team had been tracking Mercer since his identification, building a comprehensive picture of his movements, contacts, and activities. The pattern suggested preparation for something more active than simple verification of the dead drop status. "We've identified 3 other locations with similar profiles," Foster continued. "Former gas stations that underwent tank decommissioning. During the same period, Reed was involved with the process. All have changed ownership multiple times, with 2 currently operating as different businesses and 1 abandoned." The emerging pattern suggested a systematic approach to creating hidden storage locations using underground tanks scheduled for decommissioning as perfect concealment for classified materials. The genius of the approach was its invisibility. Once tanks were officially documented as decommissioned, they would rarely, if ever, be examined again unless environmental concerns arose. "What's our next step?" Elena asked, maintaining the pretense of a business call while discussing the unfolding operation. "He's clearly fishing for information about what happened to whatever was hidden here." "We're accelerating the operation," Foster replied. "Based on Mercer's increased interest and patterns we're seeing at the other locations, we believe they're preparing to retrieve materials from multiple sites. The timeline has compressed significantly." 2 days later, Elena received notice of a planned escalation in the operation. Rather than simply monitoring Mercer's activities, the intelligence team would implement a controlled approach, using Elena's established relationship to introduce a new scenario that might elicit more specific information about the network's intentions. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Elena would mention casual plans for additional renovations, including potentially breaking through the concrete pad where the tanks had been located to create a basement storage area, a development that would threaten any remaining hidden materials and potentially force Mercer to reveal more about his interest in the property. When Mercer made his next appearance at Crossroads Market, Elena was prepared with a carefully crafted script that appeared completely natural within their established pattern of polite business interaction. "Back again so soon?" she greeted him as he entered outside his usual Thursday schedule, a deviation that itself signaled increased interest or potential urgency. "Just passing through and needed a quick coffee," he explained, glancing around the store with the subtle assessment patterns that distinguished him from ordinary customers. Your renovation has really transformed this place. Hard to believe it's the same building. Thanks, though we're not quite finished, Elena replied, implementing the planned narrative. I'm meeting with contractors next week about potentially excavating under the patio area to create basement storage. The concrete pad where the old pump stood is perfect for expansion, now that all the tank issues have been properly addressed. The reaction was subtle but unmistakable, a momentary freezing of expression and slight color change that confirmed the information had struck its target. Mercer recovered quickly, but not before the monitoring systems had captured his physiological response in precise detail. Sounds ambitious, he managed with forced casualness. Though excavation can uncover unexpected problems, especially around former tank areas, you might want to consider above-ground expansion instead, less expensive and fewer regulatory complications. I appreciate the advice, Elena said warmly, completing their interaction with practiced ease. I'll definitely consider that before making final decisions. The exchange lasted less than 3 minutes, but provided exactly the reaction the intelligence team had been seeking. Confirmation that Mercer had specific concerns about excavation in the tank areas and was actively trying to discourage any activity that might interfere with potential remaining materials. That evening, Elena received an encrypted briefing that revealed how dramatically the operation was accelerating. Surveillance teams had observed Mercer making immediate contact with 2 previously unknown associates following his visit to Crossroads. Analysis of their subsequent movements suggested urgent response to the information Elena had provided. You've forced their timeline, General Harmon explained during a secure video conference. The threat of excavation created exactly the pressure point we needed to accelerate their activities and expose more of their network. The intelligence team had identified 4 additional individuals connected to Mercer through sophisticated pattern analysis, former military contractors with specialized experience who had worked at nuclear facilities during overlapping periods. With Thomas Reed, their sudden convergence in communication patterns after years of apparent inactivity signaled operational activation that aligned perfectly with Mercer's increased interest in Crossroads market. We believe they're planning coordinated retrieval from multiple locations, Agent Foster explained. Your information about potential excavation has created urgency that's forcing them to move before they've completed full operational preparation. For Elena, the briefing created both professional satisfaction and heightened awareness of potential risks. Her role had evolved from passive asset to active participant in an intelligence operation targeting individuals with access to America's most sensitive defense information. The stakes extended far beyond her small market in rural Georgia to national security implications that could affect global stability. What happens when they realize the materials are gone? Elena asked, recognizing the potential danger when Mercer discovered the government had already removed whatever had been hidden beneath her property. Won't that create significant risk? That's precisely why we're implementing enhanced security protocols around your location, General Harmon replied. We've established discrete protective measures throughout Millerville, with response teams positioned to intervene immediately if necessary. Your safety remains our highest priority alongside operational objectives. The following week brought dramatic developments as the intelligence operation expanded beyond monitoring to active intervention. Surveillance teams tracked Mercer's associates to 3 different locations across Georgia and Tennessee, former gas stations with similar profiles to Crossroads Market. Coordinated raids executed simultaneously by specialized teams discovered hidden containers in 2 locations, each containing components of classified materials similar to what had been found beneath Elena's property. The breakthrough finally provided comprehensive understanding of Reed's system. He had created a distributed storage network, hiding different components of classified materials across multiple locations, A compartmentalization approach that protected the complete information from discovery if any single location was compromised. It's actually brilliant tradecraft, Agent Foster explained during an emergency briefing. Read split authentication codes, facility access protocols, and command procedures across different locations. Only someone with knowledge of all hiding places could reconstruct the complete system. It's essentially a physical encryption method using geographic distribution. What remained unclear was whether the network was attempting to retrieve these materials for foreign transfer or for some domestic purpose that remained obscure. The timing suggested urgency beyond simple verification, potentially indicating plans to use the information for specific operations against nuclear command and control systems. As the investigation accelerated, Elena maintained normal business operations at Crossroads Market, while the intelligence presence around Millerville intensified. Surveillance teams established coverage throughout the small town, monitoring for any approach to Elena's property while tracking Mercer's movements with unprecedented detail. The confrontation came sooner than expected. 3 days after Elena's mention of excavation plans, Mercer arrived at Crossroads Market after closing hours, bypassing the public entrance and attempting to access the patio area where tanks had been located. The security systems detected his presence immediately, silently alerting response teams while recording his activities in precise detail. Elena, working late on inventory in her apartment above the market, received an urgent encrypted message: security breach in progress. Remain in secure location. Response team approaching. The response was swift and controlled. Within minutes, a specialized team had surrounded the property while maintaining complete operational discretion. No visible police presence or obvious security intervention that might alert potential accomplices monitoring from nearby positions. When Mercer realized the materials were missing, his behavior changed dramatically. He attempted urgent communication through an encrypted device, sending coded messages that the surveillance systems captured but couldn't immediately decode. The intelligence team, monitoring in real time, made the operational decision to intervene before he could alert associates or implement contingency protocols. The arrest was executed with remarkable precision. Mercer taken into custody without incident. The entire operation completed within 7 minutes without attracting attention from Millerville residents. By the time local customers arrived for morning coffee the following day, there was no evidence of the national security operation that had unfolded overnight. For Elena, watching the operation from her secured apartment created a surreal disconnect between her daily business activities and the high-stakes intelligence work unfolding around her property. The failing gas station she had purchased with her last $550 had become the centerpiece of a counterintelligence operation that was now uncovering one of the most significant security breaches in recent history. 1 week after Mercer's arrest, Elena was transported to a secure facility for a comprehensive briefing on the operation's results. The information shared revealed implications far beyond what she had initially imagined when discovering the hidden container beneath her property. The network we've identified represents one of the most sophisticated internal threats we've encountered, General Harmon explained as classified images appeared on secure screens. Reed established a compartmentalized system that could have provided unauthorized access to nuclear command and control protocols if fully reconstituted. The investigation had identified 7 individuals involved in the network, including military contractors, former intelligence personnel, and technical specialists who had worked within America's nuclear security infrastructure. Their pattern of activities suggested preparation for a significant operation, targeting critical defense systems, potentially creating vulnerabilities that could be exploited during international crises. Ms. Blackwood, your role in this operation has been invaluable, Agent Foster acknowledged. Without your initial discovery and subsequent participation, We might never have identified this network until after they had retrieved and potentially deployed the information hidden across these locations. For Elena, the recognition created a profound sense of purpose that transcended her business operations. The bankruptcy that had seemed like absolute failure had positioned her to make discoveries and contributions that potentially protected America's most sensitive security systems from compromise. What happens to Crossroads Market now? Elena asked, recognizing that the operation's success might change the intelligence community's interest in her small business. Does the surveillance platform continue, or does my property return to being just a market? The response revealed how significantly her role had evolved beyond the initial discovery. We'd like to propose a more formal ongoing relationship, General Harmon explained. Your combination of business ownership, security background, and demonstrated operational capability makes you an ideal candidate for continued participation in related intelligence activities. The proposal outlined a dual-purpose arrangement where Crossroads Market would continue operating as a legitimate business while serving as a platform for specialized intelligence operations. Elena would receive formal training in operational security, surveillance techniques, and counterintelligence methodology, essentially becoming a field operative with commercial cover that provided perfect explanation for her presence in Millerville. We're not asking you to abandon your business, Agent Foster clarified. In fact, its success is crucial to maintaining effective cover. But we're offering the opportunity to serve in a capacity that leverages your unique capabilities and position, while providing significant compensation beyond your commercial revenue. For Elena, the proposal represented an extraordinary evolution of her professional journey. The bankruptcy that destroyed her security business had created circumstances that ultimately revealed her capacity for more significant work than corporate protection. The desperate $550 investment in a failing gas station had positioned her perfectly for contributions to national security that would never have been possible in her previous career. After careful consideration, Elena accepted the proposed arrangement, with specific conditions that protected her autonomy while establishing clear operational parameters. Crossroads Market would continue developing as a community-focused business, with intelligence activities carefully designed to complement rather than compromise its commercial success. The training program began immediately, providing Elena with specialized skills that enhanced both her business operations and intelligence capabilities. The dual focus created a fascinating synthesis of commercial and security considerations, developing customer relationships that served both retail objectives and intelligence gathering simultaneously. By the one-year anniversary of her purchase, Crossroads Market had become both Millerville's most successful small business and a sophisticated intelligence platform that supported operations extending far beyond rural Georgia. The $550 investment that had seemed like a desperate gamble had transformed into an enterprise with dual purposes that few could have imagined when Elena first received the keys to a failing gas station. Most meaningful was the realization that her apparent financial disaster had actually been the critical turning point that positioned her for contributions of genuine significance. The bankruptcy that stripped away her corporate security business had created the circumstances that led directly to discovering actual threats to national security systems. On a quiet evening as Elena closed the market after a busy day, she paused to appreciate the extraordinary journey from desperate widow, purchasing a failed gas station, to becoming an integral part of operations protecting America's most sensitive defense capabilities. The covered tank areas that once concealed classified materials now served as a pleasant patio where community members gathered daily, unaware of the national security drama that had unfolded beneath their feet. The market that had represented her last chance at financial independence had become the foundation for work more meaningful than any corporate success she had previously achieved. The skills that had seemed wasted during months of mall security employment now served objectives with implications for global stability and national defense. Most profound was the lesson about apparent failure and hidden opportunity. The bankruptcy that had seemed like the definitive end of her professional aspirations had actually been the essential first step toward discovering her true capabilities. The desperate purchase that friends had questioned had revealed itself as the pivotal decision that positioned her to make discoveries of extraordinary significance. As Elena locked the front door and looked out at Millaville's quiet Main Street, she reflected on the remarkable truth that sometimes total financial collapse creates possibilities that success never could. The courage to invest her last resources in a failing rural gas station had revealed hidden materials that changed understanding of national security, vulnerabilities while transforming her own life in ways no careful career planning could have achieved. Tomorrow would bring new customers seeking coffee and conversation, unaware that their local market owner was simultaneously managing a sophisticated intelligence operation that extended to the highest levels of government. The dual purpose created a life rich with both community connection and national service, a combination that would never have emerged without the apparent disaster that forced her to rebuild from nothing. The bankrupt widow who had lost everything to her husband's reckless investments had discovered that sometimes complete failure clears the path to opportunities beyond imagination. The $550 investment that had seemed like her last desperate attempt at independence had uncovered materials whose security implications were literally priceless, transforming a failing gas station into a pivotal location in operations protecting America's most sensitive defense systems. As Elena climbed the stairs to her apartment above the market, carrying the day's final reports that contained both business data and intelligence assessments, she felt the profound satisfaction of someone who had discovered purpose beyond conventional success. The journey from financial devastation to meaningful contribution had required nothing more than the courage to move forward when retreat seemed like the only rational option, a lesson more valuable than any business school could teach. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.